Okay,
Okay, let me do that. I'm step away.
I was a smaller person then.
One time I broke a bench when I was pregnant and I was so
No.
embarrassed. Yeah, anyway.
Full classroom, juniors, football players,
Oh, no.
skirt off.
That sounds like a story.
Right.
Okay, who can tell me a definition for point of view? Anybody want
Point
to
of view?
volunteer? Yes.
Whose head you're looking through?
Whose head you're looking through? Anybody else want to take a stab?
Yeah, I like that. The eyes that you see the story through. It's the
Okay.
filter to everything.
Okay, yeah. So that is typically how we think of point of view, is how we're filtering our perspective, the narrator or the main character that we're filtering our perspective through. That's a great basic definition. Point of view, as far as like technical writing goes, has a lot of different components that I think a lot of writers could focus more heavily on and have a more clear idea of how they are structuring the point of view that they're writing. Specifically a novel from, because a novel, obviously you need a consistent point of view for a much longer period of time. I just want to be clear that I'm talking about point of view in fiction. Point of view in nonfiction is completely different, and I don't write nonfiction, so somebody else would have to talk about that. So it's the way that a writer chooses to show the reader the character and their world, so that's a great basic definition. It's made up of many different components, and it's how you shape your narrative. It's the choices that you make that shape the whole thing that you get to present to your reader. It can include person, as in first, second, third person, tense, access, distance, reliability, and the number of point of views you choose. So it's important because it controls access to and when your plot is, shaping that plot, suspense and pacing, essentially everything in a book. It controls the characters, if they're sympathetic, if they're likable. If you want a bad guy to be likable, making him the point of view character is a great idea. Or if you want, you know, so anyway, the point of view also gives you access to a character's thoughts. So if you really think that you need to know the thoughts of a particular character, you want to pick that character as your point of view character, and access to backstory. So these are all, when you're looking at your cast of characters and deciding your point of view, this is all stuff you have to consider. Certain genres and time periods have different commonly used points of view. Modern young adult usually uses first person present. Older novels usually use third person past tense. So looking at the genres and seeing what's common can help you make those decisions. Though obviously you can make different decisions. You can make a juxtaposed decision for emphasis or something like that. But knowing what's common and then being systematic in the way that you're applying those commonly used point of views is a good way to kind of change up a novel or to make a novel really familiar to the reader. Okay, so choosing your point of view character is kind of the first step before you choose any of the other technical pieces. So that's your main character typically, or maybe multiple characters in your cast, depending on how you want to write and depending on your genre. More characters might be more common. So you can think about what characters are at the center of your plot. So in Harry Potter, the point of view character is Harry Potter because it's Harry Potter and we need his point of view. Which characters need to give and receive information, especially in books like, say, like a mystery. If you need a character to know a certain piece of information and they have no way in the plot to receive that information, you're having to kind of contrive ways to deliver information and it feels inauthentic. You might want to think about, okay, well, maybe I need an additional point of view, or maybe I need to change my point of view. Character. Which characters are supposed to be sympathetic to the reader? One of my favorite things is unlikable characters as main characters, because creating an understandable villain who is then the main character is super compelling to me. So I love using that point of view to be sympathetic, because then you get that person's thoughts. And what characters do you want to write about? I think that's probably should be at the top because it's the most important. If you hate writing about your character because you picked them for some technical point of view reason, you're not going to write it. So definitely picking a character in your cast that you like. Obviously some of this is like engineered backwards, like a lot of people start with a character and build their story from there, so you have your point of view character from the beginning. But if you're someone who builds plot first or builds setting first, then this could be a list that you use to choose what your point of view character is. Okay, something we all know, first, second, third person, right? So first person, normal point of view to choose. It's when you say I. It provides intimacy. It can provide like a closeness to the character that you can't necessarily get in third person. I was just talking about this book to you, Tammy. The Will of the Many by James Islington, which everyone should read because it's fantastic. It's written in first person present, even though it's an adult novel. And it's really compelling because I am dangling, and it is only my father's blood-slick grip around my wrist that stops me from falling. And so you're really getting his point of view in a way that third person would not allow you access to that. Like, my father is so much more intimate than if it was third person, it said his father, right? So this scene becomes way more high stakes. This is the first line of the book. So you have no investment in this character from the plot or anything. You don't know anything about him. You don't even know his name, right? So you immediately create intimacy with this character by using first person. Second person is the least used. It's you speaking to the reader. It implicates the reader. Some authors use it to be unsettling. I would say the most famous, these are all going to be fantasy examples because I read fantasy, but the most famous fantasy book that uses second person is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Won the Hugo Nebula Award, so if you want to read a second person perspective, this one is excellent. Says something happened up north, Learned tells you. You sit on the edge of the bed, he's in a chair across from you. You're drinking more nasty tea. Your head hurts worse than a hangover. So it's an odd point of view, right? Because the character is not you, but it's speaking to you. And there is a plot device happening here that is a spoiler for this book, so I won't tell you what it is. But it just creates an interesting thing where you are actually put into the character's position. Again, not common, not executed easily, so, you know, I personally wouldn't venture there. Third person might be the most historically common grammatical person that's been used. You get to survey what's happening, like you can describe things that the character's not thinking actively about, like setting. So if you have like a beautiful setting you want to describe, like J.R.R. Tolkien, right? Spends paragraphs and paragraphs describing Middle Earth. He wouldn't be able to do that from third person. So, or from first person. So he uses third person to do that. But you get less intimacy with the characters. Obviously, you can have a close third person, but it's not going to be like you're talking to a friend like first person would be. So the fifth season also has two perspectives from third person as well as the second person perspective. And this is just a normal kind of paragraph. The straw is so warm that Demaya doesn't want to come out of it. Like a blanket she thinks through the bleariness of half sleep. So kind of normal descriptions, and you can see this child. I think this works for this perspective because it is a child that this perspective is from. And this is an adult novel. So the you perspective is an adult, read by adults, so that works to me. If the child perspective was a you and I'm an adult, don't know if that would work as well. So I think obviously she's a genius, so she made great decisions. Okay, let's talk about tense. This is another one that writers don't necessarily make an active decision when they start to write. If you read a lot of first person, you probably write in first person. If you read a lot of, if you read a lot of present tense, you probably write in present tense. If you read a lot of past tense, you probably write in past tense. I read mostly past tense. When they started writing all the YA in present tense, I was a hater. I'm still a hater, but I metabolized it a little bit. So yeah, it's written like it's happening, creates immediacy and urgency, which is usually why authors choose that. If you're writing a story that's heavy on action, you might choose this. If you're writing a story for a younger audience, you might choose this because they like feeling like things are happening to them because they're young. Nothing has happened to them yet, so they have no past tense to work with. So The Hunger Games was written in present tense. And obviously the productive here is Katza. Is that her name?
Katniss.
Yeah.
Katniss.
Katniss, thank you. Both probably. 60 seconds, that's how long we're required to stand on our metal circles before the sound of a gong releases us. Step off before the minute is up, and landmines blow your legs off. 60 seconds to take in the ring of tributes, all equidistant from the cornucopia, a giant golden horn shaped like a cone with a curved tail, the mouth of which is at least 20 feet high, etc. So, Hunger Games, high action book, written for a younger audience, and I think it works because you are kind of sitting in that action throughout essentially the entire book, the entire series. Past tense, we've all read past tense. It's just written like a story being told to you. I prefer that, just personal preference. And then you've got, like, I gave you an older example here because historically this is what novels have been written in. So Pride and Prejudice. Mr. Bennet was so odd, a mixture of quick part, sarcastic humor, reserve, and caprice, that the experience of 3 and 20 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. So obviously Pride and Prejudice has an omniscient narrator, who's kind of telling you this in a very story-like way. She was kind of one of the first authors to do that. And because it's got a story-like omniscient narrator, we need past tense. We need to be able to tell it like it's a story. So this works really well here. And I think she obviously is kind of famous for making that omniscient narrator popular. So I don't think anybody in this time was writing in first person anyway, or in present tense anyway. So the only thing that I've consistently seen that people make mistakes with is the past, how you refer to things in the past when you've made this choice. When you write in present tense, you just use past tense when you refer to things in the past, right? So if you're writing a story and you're like, I was going to the bathroom and then I thought about yesterday when I had a sandwich. That's present tense. You had a sandwich, so you use the past tense. That's a bad example. When I ate a sandwich. You ate a sandwich. Ate is past tense, right? So you were going to the bathroom, you ate a sandwich. That's past tense to refer to something in the past. If you're writing in past tense, you have to use the past perfect tense. You have to add had. And if you're writing about somebody thinking about something in the past, it gets a little confusing. And the hads get left. They get left off. So just when you're writing in past tense, be really aware of when you're referring to something that happened before the scene that you're writing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does get really confusing. So you have to kind of be deliberate about which verbs are happening now, which verbs happened in the past. Okay, access. This is one where people kind of go in and out a little bit. When you have an omniscient narrator, you might go in and out of referring to the entire world, and then you narrow in, and that's pretty common. If you're a new writer, being more consistent about your access throughout your book is probably better, because doing the zoom in, zoom out thing effectively, doing it intentionally, is a little bit more difficult. So the omniscient narrator, again, more common in classic literature. I just gave you the Pride and Prejudice example, which is again up there. And it's great if you want to present information in a way that the character wouldn't. So in Pride and Prejudice, she often talks about like the societal implications of things. I think here she's talking about the relationship between Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet. And Mr. Bennet would never say what is being said here about his wife. And Mrs. Bennet would obviously never say it because she doesn't believe it. So having the omniscient narrator that can tell us these kind of interesting things. And then there's a famous line in Pride and Prejudice where it's talking about like, everyone knows that all a man wants is a wife or whatever. A single man who has money, all he wants is a wife, right? No one's going to say that, but it's a famous line.
The opening line. Yes.
Yeah, all wealthy men, all they want is a wife, obviously, as Jane Austen has said. So, like, that's an omniscient narrator, and she uses it to be funny. She uses it to explain the society at the time to us, because that's the point of her books, is the society. So she does it really effectively. And you can use it to insert humor. You can use it to kind of just create an atmosphere that you want in your storytelling that you might not get in a more limited access kind of package. So talking about limited access, it's what most people write in nowadays. It's what modern writers usually opt for. if you are in a critique group, you probably have gotten feedback on head hopping or on, oh, you're in this character's point of view, but then you said something that they wouldn't know. That's a really common critique. If you haven't established a purposeful omniscient narrator and you have a limited access point of view, that's a legitimate critique. If you have, or you think you've established an omniscient narrator of some kind, and you get that critique, you can throw it away. Yeah, so it's interesting because Harry Potter is a super great example of this because Harry Potter has both. It has omniscient, kind of on accident, because she was a new writer when she wrote the Sorcerer's Stone, and it also has limited, mostly limited. We know that Harry Potter is mostly limited to Harry's point of view, except for in a few places, and I have those examples later on. So Harry had never even imagined such a strange and splendid place. It was lit by thousands and thousands of candles, which were floating in midair above 4 long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. So Harry walks into the Great Hall, Grand Hall, one of those, and he is seeing everything. It's like he had never imagined. Okay, we're in his head, right? Easy, limited. It is on a sliding scale, right? How limited you want to be. So you can kind of get closer, get further away, but it kind of bleeds. We'll talk about the difference between access and distance, but they are heavily related. Objective access is not very common, and like the reason Ernest Hemingway wrote Kills Like White Elephants in objective access, or he wrote it that way because he was experimenting with that level of access. It's not very common at all, and when it is written, it's like an experiment, and it's famous for being an experiment. But it's basically just like what can be physically observed. So there's no thoughts, there's no like, someone assuming something. He's just describing the room, describing the actions. A little bit boring. I like books better than movies because books give us access to thoughts. Obviously, objective access is not as fun, personally. Okay, distance. You can be really close to a character, or you can be really far away from a character. I wrote here, bottom access and distance are heavily reliant on one another, but distinct because access can be modified by distance to achieve different styles. For instance, third person and omniscient can be either close or distant. Distant is also on a sliding scale and varies from scene to scene. Again, as a new writer, this is one of the trickier ones, right? Getting really close to if you want to write a close point of view, maintaining that close point of view can be difficult. I personally struggle with this, right? Like understanding how close you are, and then because it's not like a scale of 1 to 10, let me maintain a 2 the whole time, right? So it is hard to maintain a close point of view, for me personally, and understanding like how much thought access you have. Like you're not writing probably in a novel stream of consciousness of your character. That's boring. We don't get setting, we don't get anything, right? So that would be stream of consciousness would be like the most close. You're just getting all their thoughts and that's it. You want a little bit of distance so you can kind of describe the setting, kind of give little plot clues here and there. Usually you want that distance, but some people really want to be really close, and understanding where you sit in that scale and maintaining that throughout 100,000 words or however many is really, really challenging. So I think that's where critique partners come in probably. Yeah, the most distant access is objective, like we talked about. Being objective is really far from your character's point of view. Okay, reliability. Who's read an unreliable narrator? Who's written an unreliable narrator? Chris, of course.
Okay.
No, he's in my critique group, so I've read some of his shady characters. Yeah, so a reliable narrator, I mean, everyone's gonna make mistakes, like as a person, as a character, right? Like someone being wrong doesn't mean they're an unreliable narrator. Someone, not knowing what's gonna happen next doesn't make them an unreliable narrator. Harry not knowing that Dumbledore is keeping secrets doesn't make him unreliable. It makes Dumbledore crazy. So, that's kind of the difference here is an unreliable narrator has a warped, biased, mistaken, or deceptive account of the story. So mistaken would be like, you're mistaken on like a whole different level. Like you don't understand what's going on. an obvious example of an unreliable narrator would be someone who has a mental illness. What's that movie called where the guy has to write everything on his skin?
Memento.
Yeah, there we go. So that's a great example. I've seen it. I apparently didn't remember the name of it. So in the Hunger Games, same example as we talked about before. She is just telling you what's happening, right? She's just narrating what she sees, what she's thinking, and it's pretty reliable. Like, we believe her. We believe Katniss is telling us the truth. She isn't. I mean, honestly, she could be politically motivated, right? But you know, we kind of believe her narrative. Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe is a really classic example of an unreliable narrator. This person is like questioning their own sanity in this poem, which I'm sure we've all read. And I think that, again, like mental illness is like a really classic unreliable narrator. I think somebody who's being purposefully deceptive, that's something that you get in unreliable narrators. And then I think also people who are being manipulated by other people can be unreliable narrators. So, you know, writing like a wife with a like psychotic husband or something like that who's manipulating her, she doesn't understand what's going on. Could
Could you
be.
do the same thing with a narcissist that he's?
Oh yeah, same thing. Yeah, I mean, psychotic.
Goes without saying.
I wasn't gonna say narcissistic because that's such a buzzword and it doesn't really have a meaning.
It really
nowadays,
fits
but-
one of my characters too.
Could it be when they're deliberately minimizing events?
Like the
So-
main character.
Yeah, like so if the point of view character is minimizing events, like, oh, there was an incident that happened. No, that was a murder.
Yeah, for sure. If it so deceptive account gives the deceptive account of the story.
I have a question. I'm sorry with the headache. I don't know if I can articulate myself, but, just speaking about the deceptive, character or narration, is it always presented or most commonly presented in a way that's manipulating other characters and you as a reader observe it? Or is it the characters manipulating you as the reader?
So I would say that a
Or is that a
character.
genre thing? That would be like a thriller mystery versus a.
So okay, as far as manipulating the reader in a mystery, that would be the author manipulating the reader. Because the character doesn't have a relationship to the reader. Because unless it's second person where it's talking directly to you, the character doesn't have a relationship to you. So the author might be trying to manipulate, like have red herrings and stuff, but that's not an unreliable narrator, that's a plot device. Does that make sense? So a character who's unreliable might be deceptive inside the plot that does fool the reader, but they're not being deceptive to you because you're not involved in the plot. Does that make sense? Okay. Chris, what kind of unreliable narrators do you write? Are they deceptive? Are they crazy? What are they?
Manipulative.
Manipulative. Okay, this is my favorite one. My current work in progress has 5 points of view. Yes, I added one this week. Take them away, Adam. You know, it's great. I write fantasy, so that's going to be something you see is that the number of points of view are heavily reliant on genre. Not always. You know, some books have lots of points of view and they're like literary or something, but it's just a pattern. In a lot of genre fiction, you have more points of view. In literary fiction, you usually have one point of view, maybe a couple, maybe generational. But this is a way that you can kind of mix and match these methods to deliver the narrative that you want to deliver. I was talking about the 5th season earlier that has 3 points of view, 2 are third person, 2 are third person, 1 is second person. So she uses these devices very effectively and very intentionally to create the story she wants to create. Again, she's like a master writer, so like, you know, maybe we'll start small. I don't do that. I write only in third person because that would blow my mind if I tried to do multiple grammatical persons and one novel.
I have a point to raise on this. I've found that a lot of newer writers really love to have all of these multiple chapters narrated by different people, changing viewpoints, things like that. Wow, they're having fun writing. And it does not always work for the reader. I have read book after book that I've just pushed aside, and I'm a literary person, so it's not that I don't read. I think sometimes the writer gets so caught up in their craft that they're not thinking about, is this really the best way to tell my story in a way that engages the reader? They want to keep turning pages. They want to see a plot develop. They want to see a theme, an idea. They want to have some feeling relationship for the characters. Otherwise, I just think it's like a parlor game.
Yeah.
And that's a totally personal opinion, but I just feel there's a lot of that out there that is not really strong writing.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you read a lot of fantasy?
no.
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 Yeah. So I would say that you said you read a lot of literary fiction.
Well, I read it and write it and study it and taught it and prefer, and that's not trying to sound, it's just that I think that, and even going back to Hemingway, your point about objectivity, there's a huge story in that, The Hills of White, you know. And so it's sometimes it's in the hand of the writer to use the craft in a way that works.
Right. And
You
I think
know,
that the more
and-
points of view you choose, the more you have to be intentional about your character development, about your plot development, right? I do think that, like, I read a lot of fantasy. I have not read a fantasy with a singular point of view in many of them. Actually, that's not true.
So is
Well,
that
it
a
is, but
trend
it's in
in
one
your
point of view.
genre? Is that just what it, or is that?
So largely, if you don't read, okay, so obviously other genres can have multiple points of view,
Oh, they do.
but fantasy, like, you know, it says here, Malazan, Book of the Fallen, very popular if you've never heard of it, has 450 unique points of view.
Wow.
Okay, so when I say fantasy has many points of view, I don't mean it has 6, I mean it has 450,
Right.
okay?
And you
And this
feel
isn't-
that helps the reader. Does the reader absorb all 406, if I'm reading that right? Or does that interfere sometime with the reader going like, you know what?
Yeah, of course, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's read Game of Thrones, eventually you're like, who is this? I don't know who this is.
Right.
But like, it's when you're reading fantasy, go ahead, Kayla.
I was gonna say, I think it lends itself, at least in the J.R.R. Martin example, is the George R.R. Martin example is like it leads more to the world building of it because you're getting these different points of
Right,
view.
now he's a master at it.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
doesn't mean that all the
But,
others are.
Yeah, but I also read a lot of romance.
Mhm.
A lot of romance right now are duets. So they
Yes.
have they'll have the FMC, the female main character,
Right.
and then the MMC, the
Right.
male main character points of view, and then they'll clash.
Right. Well, that's two.
and
I have a question
Yeah.
about that very specifically, because typically in romance genres, so much of the tension is a misunderstanding
Yes.
between the two
Yes.
main characters.
Yes.
So how have you seen authors be able to achieve that misunderstanding with that dual POV?
Yeah, because that kind of goes back to your, and I'm not trying to jump ahead, but I get nailed for this all the time. And it absolutely drives me bat crazy, and I'm trying to be polite by not saying another word, but they always accuse me, because especially when you're using a different point of view and you have maybe a paragraph where that person is, you know, their viewpoint, that means what mine's historical fiction. So, but I do have an underlying subplot of a romance. Okay.
Mhm.
So, you know, he says one thing and then she's like, oh, no, I'm not going to go, you know, I'm not going to pack up and move out in the country with the rest of the people that are fleeing the Blitzkrieg. And, you know, so, and they say, oh, you're head hopping. I'm like, no, I'm not,
But
because
if
I
you're,
have a
so if
completely
you're
separate
in
paragraph.
modern fiction,
Right.
you typically need at least a scene break
Mhm.
for it not to be head hopping.
But here's what somebody told me. I had an editor that I didn't ask her to edit, but she took it upon herself to edit it and came back and said, I counted 127 of your scene breaks, and that's not typical in that genre. And I looked at this woman and I thought, first of all, I didn't ask you to do it. Number two, that was how I was taught. If you're going to do a different point of view, you have to have something that breaks the scene so that you're in the next
Right.
person's head. So it's like,
Yeah.
then what do you do?
I think that editors say, so like in my book, it's gonna be 100,000 words, it's 56 scenes. So That would be a lot. 127 scenes in a novel is a lot of scenes, but that's not wrong. It's just if you want to write shorter scenes, you got to make sure it's working, right?
Right,
So I don't think that's wrong.
but I didn't think
Tammy,
that there
you're
was a
asking how do
specific-
you make the
Yes.
misunderstanding? So is it a subplot or is it a romance? It's a different because they're gonna have different answers to those questions.
I would say the romance is the subplot.
Okay. So in a romantic subplot, when you're writing it in a different genre, because romance has a whole slew of reader expectations that you have to meet. For the subplot, you don't have to meet any of those expectations. You just need to write a compelling romance. I hate personally, and I'm a survey of one, so maybe survey other people. But I hate when a romance hinges on a literal like misunderstanding of communication. Like if the guy's like, I really like you, and she goes away and she's, oh man, I thought he loved me. And then that's their fight. I'm like, this is so stupid. So to me, the misunderstanding has to either be a misunderstanding of value, right? Like in your book specifically, like I want to go fight in this conflict. Oh well, if you want to go fight in this conflict, I'm a pacifist, so we can't be together. Like to me, that is a tension that makes sense. Like a conflict of value, a conflict of maybe location, right? So like think about your own romantic relationships that you had. What are the real tensions in those relationships? I don't read romance. I read subplot romance. So like when I see a romance and they're having a conflict, I'm like, is this a real conflict somebody would have?
You
Is
gotta
it-
also worry about, like, mine's historical fiction, and you have to look at, okay, what was a woman and a
Right.
man's role, you
Right.
know, in society during the 1920s versus nowadays. You know, I had to go
Yeah.
backwards and look at that and go, yeah, she would have followed whatever her father said, because that's what was expected in 1920, and, you know, nowadays, see you, bye, but, you know, back then, there was a norm that she had to abide by.
Right.
And even when she went to go chase her dreams, her dreams were against what a woman should have been doing. And she still pushed forward and said, I'm gonna continue to do it whether you like it or not, and she changed the world
Right.
because of her efforts. So,
Right. So if you can have a conflict of society, that would be value still, right?
and this book,
Um,
it's the guy, the next book is.
but that's just my person. And I've heard someone say before that if a romantic conflict can be solved with a conversation, it's not a good conflict. Like if you can go to the partner, like if one person can go to the other partner in the novel and say, well, you said this to me and I'm confused, and that fixes it, that's not a conflict. That's dumb.
That's what so many of romance
And I think it's
plus conflicts are.
I read romance.
Well, Danielle,
Because
you
that's-
could
so
read
that's
it in
why I
10
was
minutes. I
confused,
mean,
like how
that's
is
Danielle
he
Ross.
successful
She
in,
says this.
that dual POV, say, first person.
So-
If you read that genre, I'd like to know
Yeah,
how they accomplish that.
I've got a pretty specific example. I sat down, I read Leather and Lark, and one of the conflicts that the two had was it was a fake marriage, and it was going to be developing feelings from that. So when she was mentioning how closed off he is emotionally, and she storms off from him, he's like, okay, well, how do I get unclosed off? So he actually texts her best friend and says, the chapter goes to his point of view, and he's texting her best friend saying, how do I do this? And the best friend is not having it, and does give him some snarky advice to where when it does flip to back to the female main character's point of view, some time has passed, they're kind of talking again, but when they get in the car, and he cranks up the car, his romance novel starts playing. Like he's listening to an audiobook because he's like, I didn't know the first thing about romance, so your friend told me to listen to a romance novel. So that's what I'm doing. So like she's not for the female perspective, she's not noticing the side work he was putting in, the thoughts of like, all right, I'm gonna have to do the unmanly thing and go read a romance novel so I can figure out what my fake wife likes.
But I have a question, and this is just being devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Is that also taking it to the extreme to being stereotypical? That you know what I'm saying? I mean, where he's taking it going, I don't know what else to do because there's no rule book on romance,
Mhm.
or relationships, and so is he just taking it completely to a stereotype?
I think
saying,
this is
"Let me
romance. This is romance
like home.
novel like beats.
Yeah,
And romance novel beats generally
would have to have
do
that.
not work as a subplot in a larger novel because they are so specific and you must hit them. If you don't hit them, no one's gonna read your book.
Can you use it in a historical fiction?
Of course, you can use some of the beats to
Yeah,
create whatever
right.
you want to
So-
create, but like for instance, in a romance novel, we're talking about the tension, right? Like the third act conflict, the third act breakup It's like the thing of a romance novel. They have to break up in the third act.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they have to get back together. And if you don't do those things, nobody wants to read your book. Yes, there are exceptions. I know you're
Yeah,
thinking,
you
I
have
can
some-
see your brain.
I was just
You're
thinking, I was
exceptions.
like, I've read a couple. It's not a lot, but it's a couple.
Right,
Just
but
watch almost.
I don't personally like, okay, so like in The Will of the Many that I referenced here, there's a romance. They break up. They don't get back together. They don't even see each other. She's like gone. He hates her. And that's the whole romance. And I
Oh, wow.
love it because I'm reading about Viz and I want to read about Viz and he's hyper confident. I don't want his girlfriend around. It's annoying. Like, she's annoying. So I think like if you're reading or if you're writing a genre that is not romance, you don't need the beats. You can read something like Romancing the Beat, which is a book about writing romances, and pull beats from that. But I don't think you have room to do every beat, even unless you're gonna write a 200,000 word novel.
War
Who
and
wants to do
peace.
This
So
is
how do
not-
you, if you're gonna do something in to keep the head hopping,
Mhm.
so you just clearly put the 3 asterisks and move to the next person's and change it in the paragraph, the next paragraph, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Can I
would
quote you
be-
on that?
I would be careful about really short scenes. Like if you have 127 scenes and you're writing a 100,000 word novel, then your scenes are like 700 words, which is a very short scene. That's average, right? So like that might harm your pacing, but you can look at maybe you're trying to write a really fast paced novel. Maybe that's what you're trying to do. But you can look at like moving scenes to combine them if you have point of views of certain characters, just to try and like trim down how many scenes you have. But honestly, that doesn't have much to do with point of view. So yeah, there's a lot of again, point of view, this is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
This is no, what I'm trying to say is that it plays into all this stuff because any decision you make with point of view is gonna affect all of that. It's gonna affect your yes.
I'm sorry.
Like you're fine.
I'm
Don't
doing
apologize.
a big edit in the novel, and POV is pretty much where I think I'm gonna make a big shift. So I've got another question. So I have written it in a dual POV and basically broken up each chapter from one person's POV, but that means that who I've established as like the first person might change. And then who was maybe the first person in the previous chapter is now like the third person.
Okay.
And I am really second guessing if that's helping my book or just getting in the
Having
way.
different
That's messy.
grammatical persons.
Somebody told me you could just put it even, if you're gonna, because I'm doing that now, because somebody was like,
Yeah.
oh, you started off in this person's point of
Yeah.
view, and yet, you know,
You
you
can
don't
do
come
find
back to
place.
them until the end.
Don't
And-
do find replace.
Don't what now?
Don't do find replace. If you're saying that you can just change the
No,
grammar.
I started off with one of the
Right.
main character.
Okay.
She's in a bomb shelter, so she's thinking back of how she met her future husband.
So she's first person.
She's first person, no, she's, it's third person, but she's explaining it, kind of like a backstory to this other
Sure.
person. Well, then the next chapter, she's kind of, she's reminiscing of that morning that they met.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'm taking it from there, I go to the next chapter and I actually put his name in the title so that you knew. We're now at this point because he hasn't, he's moving on. They're children, I mean, they met when they were 8 years old. So they don't have any kind of relationship, they don't have anything to connect them for several more chapters until he finds out he has to go to school in this little town.
But when they do reconnect.
But when they do reconnect, I'm still keeping it with him because, again, I'm going back to that norm issue where she has these big, high lofty goals that she wants to be a curator of a museum and she wants to do all these wonderful things. And she's constantly getting hit with, no, we can let you do a secretary or run the register.
So do you keep him first
Yeah,
person?
in
throughout
this
the
book,
novel?
I have 7 books, but I just got prolific during COVID. Yeah, and then in second book, he's at war because wars happened in London, in England. So he's fighting the war. She's left by herself. And so pretty much all of the second book is about her.
Okay, but I guess my
So-
question is say you have character A and character B. Character A in chapter 1 is first person. Character B
Oh, I got what
is
you're saying.
third
That
person
would
in
be
that
cool.
first chapter. and then the second chapter it switches. Now
Ooh, that could be
character
interesting,
B
though.
is first person,
I wouldn't do
and
that.
she turns. It's a mess.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
It's so hard.
I mean, I'm not saying that
But
you
it would
couldn't
be
do that in some sort of experimental novel thing, but as far as like, first of all,
God bless
as far as
her.
your first one goes, that sounds like it would be
It's
very
very
difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that for the reader, when you read a text, when you read a grammatical person, your brain is immediately assumes that the grammatical person that you already read is gonna match the character that you've already read.
So you
I've never read a book that does that.
You would keep character A either first person or keep character A third person throughout the whole novel.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted one character first and one character third, that's still tricky. If you wanna do first and first, still kinda tricky. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, but it's
Mystery
first,
Thriller is doing that all over the place right
first
now.
and first.
Yeah, first
Yeah,
and
yeah.
first. I
First
just
and
read
first,
one.
I would say third and third is most easily understood. First and first is second most easily understood. Mixing your medicine there, first and third would be
It's
the
hard.
third.
I would
Let
think
the
it would,
beat
it sounds
a little
interesting, but
harder.
I would think it would be really
But
hard.
I've
to
never read a
describe
book that changes grammatical person for a point of view ever, even experimentally. Now you might Google it and find something, but I don't think it would be popular.
Cause I
think
thought
that
about
would
doing
be
the second chapter when she's remembering that day, and I thought about doing it in first person, and then I went, no, cause she's already an adult in chapter one, and now I'm talking about her.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
well, back to
so
that
essentially
point
it's
about
made me have to have two
confusing
plot
the
lines.
reader.
Yes, okay, so you were talking
Yeah,
about.
I'm just saying that sometimes a writer's got to stop and think,
Mhm.
I love doing this, and I think that would be a lot of fun to do that for me as a writer. But is it improving my story for the reader, or is it just showing that are not clever?
So I
And-
think that
and
has
that's-
less to
yeah.
do with picking the number of points of view and more to
Mhm.
do with writer skill around plot and character development.
Exactly.
Right, I think
Yeah.
that you can pick as many point of views as you want. I think the writer who's writing 3 point of views poorly is gonna write 1 point of view poorly.
Right, that's
So,
true.
And if you don't like reading genres that have multiple points of view, maybe you just don't like.
No,
multiple
it's not
points of view.
that, I just have read so many bad ones.
Yeah.
That haven't done good segues from one point of view to the other.
Mhm.
They're just not tying the story together as they're going.
Yeah.
And it seems more just a
Yeah, that,
device rather than something
that
that.
disjointedness is pretty common, like, the most popular fantasy author of all time right now, Brandon Sanderson, he writes like hundreds of points of view. And it is like that. Sometimes you turn to a point of view and you're like, what the heck is going on? Who is
Just
this?
go
Do
with
they
it.
matter? And they don't really matter.
Right.
And like Kayla said, it's for world building. Like it
Mhm.
is so that you can see, literally you'll be sitting in a city somewhere and then Brandon Sanderson will take you to the rice fields
Right.
of a different
But,
country in a different point of
No,
view
sure.
and you have no idea why.
Different
And then that
Right.
character will come back like
I get
6
that.
books later and you'll be like, oh.
I get that, I get that.
Yeah,
But outside of that genre in Game of Thrones,
I've never
what
read a book
other genres use that effectively?
the multi point of views. None of them.
Right.
I don't.
Okay.
Sci-fi, does that count?
No.
Okay.
Murder mystery, you'll
Well,
have the
no,
detective.
I mean like
you'll have the
100
Well,
point of views,
yeah.
like more than 10 probably. More than
Science fiction.
5.
I think
which is
that's-
first
Yeah,
person.
that's true, and that
Yeah.
is.
But there's a
part of-
a couple of things you can do. Some fantasy writers do well, some don't. One, John Gwynn, is really good with, and his chapter headings are the names of characters.
Which helps.
He also has at the beginning of his books, cast the characters, and you read for pages and pages, and it's helpful
Oh,
if
yeah,
you, because eventually you might forget. And the other thing is if you make the characters strong enough,
Right,
they will remember.
right. Well, maybe
And-
that's not criticism
Well,
of
somebody-
some of
yeah.
these
But if
women's
you,
fiction books.
if you
that-
make your character so strong and you leave it out of the book, and George R.R. Martin did that, his 4th book was called The Feast of Crows,
Mhm.
and Tyrion Lannister wasn't in there, and everybody hated that book, including me above all, because Tyrion was not there. Where did Tyrion go?
Yeah.
One of my
So-
favorite characters in The Devil Wears Prada was left out of The Devil Wears Prada too, just saying.
That movie was really good, by the way. You ever watch The Devil Wears Prada 2?
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah, it was, but what
Um,
happened to this guy?
Yeah, exactly.
But that, you know, one thing I was gonna tell you that I saw, and I saw the movie, so I'm sure the book did the same thing, was the traveling pants.
that was,
Each
Right,
chapter
that
was
was
from
well
the viewpoint of
yeah.
the different person, and then the horse was the same way.
Right.
You know, the person that was watching this person pull stuff out of a garbage was like, what are you doing? And then the person that saw the painting was like, oh my God, I know what this
Right,
is, you know, so.
right.
But that one confused me with it being historical fiction,
Right.
because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
So I kinda did it for some foreshadowing at the beginning or backstory, and then I kind of took it from there. I went, okay, I'm just gonna take it from here going forward, and hopefully
Yeah.
I'm not head hopping. I don't know.
Yeah, so
If it makes sense to you.
I don't
multiple
know.
point of view, we've kind of touched on a lot. It's good, like I said, for world building, like Gray was saying, it's good for mysteries, because you can have information provided from multiple places. It also can hinder you, because if you have 400 points of view and you need to
Imagine that.
conceal information from the reader, how do you do that, right? So there are a lot of drawbacks to it. Like you said, it can be confusing. I've read books where I'm like, this is a new character and I didn't realize that, and now I've read 40 pages and I'm confused. So definitely pros and cons here. I think that most writers, when they write their first book, should be picking one or two, usually one point of view. You're just starting out and you're writing your first book. Try and focus on one point of view. I wrote my first book from 2 points of view, and then I did a 50,000 word edit to get it to one point of view, because it made more sense that way. Don't be me, okay? So, yeah, so there's lots of pros and cons. I think that single and dual points of view are the strongest. Like you were saying, getting those characters to be very, very strong is way easier when you have fewer points of view. And knowing those characters really, really well helps. Let's see. Let's talk about head hopping, breaking the rules. People do it in published fiction, believe it or not. And sometimes it works really, really well. And sometimes, as in the other 99% of the time, it works really, really poorly. So I want to talk about, well, we talk about Jane Austen. She does that too. She kind of flows in and out, but she was a pioneer. And we can forgive her for some of this stuff, because she really turned literature on its head. And then she kind of experimenting with this omniscient narrator. And then George Eliot wrote Middlemarch, and he perfected that omniscient narrator. If you've never tried to read Middlemarch, it's not my favorite. It's really long, it's really boring. So the one that I want to go over here is, again, Harry Potter, because I know almost everyone knows the story if you haven't read the books. If you haven't read the books, you need to, because it's a touchstone of Western culture. But yeah, so there's a scene in The Sorcerer's Stone where J.K. Rowling moves between Harry, Ron, Hermione, in this Quidditch match, right? So she gives you Harry's point of view where he's flying on his broom and it's like trying to buck him off, gives him Ron's point of view as he's watching all this happen, and it gives you Hermione's point of view as she's setting fire to Snape's robes, right? All in this one scene. It is definitively head hopping. You have no indication that it's changing. And the rest of the books are written from Mary's point of view. It is head hopping because this is her first novel she ever wrote. Okay,
And nobody nailed her on it?
Nobody nailed her on it because, you know, it was a children's book. Who cares? No one's gonna care if you're head hopping in a children's book in one scene.
Or maybe they didn't get on her because it worked. I mean,
It did
that,
work.
That was
Yeah,
a
This scene is
wonderful
more
scene
enjoyable because of the
in
way it
terms
was
of putting you in the midst of the
Yeah, and then
craziness.
but you can see it kind of happening in other places in the novel, because I have this example here. Later in the book, she says Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing he was going to do, not knowing what he was going to do. Right? She's bitten off Ron's head randomly in the middle of this troll scene, randomly in Ron's head. And here's the really telling thing: she never does it again. She never head hops in any of the subsequent novels, ever again. So if you've read Harry Potter, you know she becomes a significantly stronger writer the longer she's been writing, as everyone does. Yeah, great.
Okay,
Yes.
so it seems like there's a fine line between head hopping and omniscient narrator.
There is a big bold line between the two.
Yeah.
Okay.
You must establish an omniscient narrator in the scene that you are going to be pulling, because she uses an omniscient narrator. When she opens the books, she often is saying, like, welcome to the world. Here's these people doing this thing. Let me describe this thing happening over here. Let me describe this thing happening over here, right? And then you narrow into Harry's point of view and you don't leave it. Okay, so we are consistently in Harry's point of view from there. If you're going to use an omniscient narrator, it's got to be very consistent. And when you narrow in, you need to stay on that character. You will be called on it. In previous decades, 1990 and before, you might not have been called on it. But we have very, very strict publishing standards. So if you have weak point of view in your book, if you're trying to be traditionally published, if you're not, then do whatever you want. If you have weak point of view, they're just not gonna pick you up. They're gonna read it and be like, they don't know what they're doing, they're gonna throw it out immediately. So omniscient is just consistently knowing what the characters are doing and thinking. And head hopping is being in one character's point of view and then just suddenly going to other ones without
Okay.
any indication that you've changed point of view. Yeah. But like I said, obviously big blockbuster books do it, but when she got better, she stopped. So, maybe that's a sign. Here's the big wheel of things you need to decide. If you're writing a book right now and you don't know the answer to these, you haven't thought about the answer to these, like what is my point of view character? If you don't know the answer to that, that's rough. That's a rough one. But which person am I writing in? Which tense am I writing in? You don't know off the top of your head. These are things you should be able. If you're actively working on, if you're actively drafting, and you don't know the answers to these questions, you are switching between them, and it's not bad. It's wrong, like definitively wrong. Access and distance are a little bit more intangible. If you don't know the answers to how much access do I have and how close am I to the character, that's more fixable. But because it is a sliding scale, so you kind of do have a little wiggle room there. But you should know, do I have access to my character's thoughts in all situations? Or do I only have access to like their feelings a little bit? Or do I have no access to what's inside their head? Do I only see what they're doing? So you should be able to kind of on that more, what's the opposite of granular? The opposite of granular, on that bigger,
Broad slope.
yeah, like on that grand scope, yeah, thank you. Way you should know how much access and distance you're working with. Reliability. This is something that if you're not doing this intentionally, then you shouldn't be doing it. If you haven't thought to yourself, my character is unreliable, or my character is mentally ill, or my character is a manipulator, and you find yourself saying, maybe my character is like this, you probably need to go back and make sure that your character is presenting that personality trait consistently. Which is fine, because like we all write our way into characters and learn about them as we go. And again, the number of points of view, super important. We talked about all the different ways that can affect our work. We can talk about point of view all the time, but being able to identify, set out each point of view for the number. Say I have 5, right? All of mine are past. They are third person. Decently close access, not super close, because who wants to be that close to anyone? So yeah, and they're all relatively reliable, except for one of them who is a little bit of a liar, but that's fine. Let's see. Yeah, first person present tense, close. So examples of popular combinations. First person present, close, full access to thoughts and emotions. Really popular for romance, especially young adult. People really love access to people's thoughts when they're falling in love. They want to be hearing what they are feeling and all that gross stuff. So, again, I don't like romance. Third person present tense or past tense. Present tense has become more popular in adult fiction. Again, I hate it, but there you go. If you love present tense, then lucky you, you can write whatever you want nowadays. Close. Third person usually has less access, so that's another popular combination. And then third person, past tense, omniscient, so having that kind of combination of third person with the omniscient narrator that kind of lets you zoom in, very popular. You just need to be really, really specific about how you're using that omniscient narrator. Yeah, I wrote literally over here, having different grammatical person or tense points of view in one piece can be confusing for the reader, it can enhance the narrative. There you go, Tammy. See the or.
Yeah.
It's not and, it's or, unfortunately. Okay, so I've got some examples here. If you haven't read, well, I've never read We Ride Upon Sticks, so, but if you haven't read Dracula or The Fifth Season or Wolf Hall, these are great books that use point of view really intentionally and effectively. Wolf Hall, if you don't know, is about Thomas Cromwell, who was a guy who worked for for the tutors
Yeah.
in and out of, in whatever, he was eventually beheaded, I think, but yeah, this is a book set during the reign of King Henry VIII. It's genius. And it's genius because she takes point of view, she's really intentional about the way she sets it up, and then she turns it on its head. No pun intended, because Henry VIII was known for his heads.
You intended that pun.
Did I right? I'm obsessed with the tutors, so you know. Yeah, so what she does in this novel that is genius is that you don't get introduced to Thomas Cromwell as the main character in a traditional way. She just refers to him as he. And almost every reference of he is Thomas Cromwell. Thomas Cromwell. And it gets confusing, but it's confusing on purpose because she's trying to show you that the way that Thomas Cromwell thinks of himself is as a part of this very important narrative. So like he'll talk about King Henry VIII, and he says he, but he doesn't mean King Henry VIII. It means Thomas Cromwell, right? So she's using this to kind of create a thought pattern. It's genius. It's confusing, but it's confusing on purpose. And it's third person, but you feel like it's first person because it's almost kind of stream of consciousness. Yeah, again, if you haven't read it, genius. Fifth season, again, 2 third persons, 1 second person. What she does in this, the plot for this, using person, again, genius. It's a spoiler, I'm not gonna tell you, but she uses it as a plot device, right? Like, who would think to use POV as a plot device, right? So again, another example of like really knowing your technical pieces of this so that you can create something that no one's ever thought of before in novels, which is a novel.
Oh, that's cute.
That's
Stay
good.
up late for that.
Trying to make sure we're awake, right? Okay, we get it.
So We Ride Upon Sticks, this isn't one I've read because I don't have a thing for witches, but this is written in first person, plural first person, we. It is the point of view of an entire field hockey team who has a seance and asks the devil or something, I haven't read it again, but to help them win field hockey, okay? But the point of view is the entire field hockey team. So again, another use of POV that's strange, and it works. I think the Virgin Suicides is also written
I
like
was gonna
this.
say, I think it would be.
Yeah. So if you don't like witches, I don't know what the Virgin Suicides is about, so maybe it's
A
about
Rose for Emily
okay. Yeah.
is we the town, and it jumps around in the time, which and the ending becomes quite a shocker.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so there's a few examples of people doing that where they have like a plural point of view. I would like to read some of them because I haven't, and that sounds like kind of genius as well. I wanted to mention epistolary novels, or novels that are made up of documents. Epistolary just means letters, but
of course,
Dracula has other documents in there. Dracula just being like a really common example of this. It doesn't have a traditional narrator. Some have, you know, some novels are mostly documents and then they have a narrator and it goes in and out, but Dracula is solely documents, so it kind of just sits outside of everything we've just talked about. Obviously Dracula, again, a genius work of fiction, but you only get the points of view of the documents. And so in order to deliver information, you're just super restricted, right? And it works in this book.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that, because like, I know I've got some parts of my story, like, she writes a letter to tell her father goodbye as she's eloping to leave. And then the other character writes a letter once they get there and the war's broken out. He's like, you know, and he's joined without his wife knowing it. And he's writing a letter to his parents back in Switzerland to explain, yes, I could have come home because I know Switzerland is neutral, but this is my home and I have to make a stand. So
Yeah, so those
Is
are
that,
just letters.
are those?
No.
No, those are just letters sitting inside of a normal
Because I didn't
narrative.
understand that, I was like.
This is a book where there's no narrative. I mean, there's a narrative, but it's all documents, it's all diary entries,
Okay, I got
like,
you.
It's framed as an after-action report, where Dr. Abraham Van Helsing and I, after all the events have happened, he's like, cool, here's all the documentation, here's what you need to understand.
Gotcha, so it's like you're the person reading,
Right.
like the whole thing
It's
that
like you're
happened.
reading a police report. after
Gotcha,
action.
okay, now I got it.
Or the correspondent right now is quite big and it's just all
so the court,
letters.
there's no, is it all letters? I just read that.
Mhm.
But that is interesting. though.
House of Leaves is like that too, but it's more like a puzzle
Yeah.
book. You
Yeah,
gotta.
it's her letters between people and you.
I guess it is. It feels so narrative that
Yeah,
I had not,
But they're
I also read it on
narrating their
audiobook,
lives to
so.
one another, yeah, but it's all
Yeah.
letters.
Yeah, so again, like, you can create a point of view using documents, like the correspondent has a clear point of view.
Mhm.
And, obviously that's in first person because she's writing I. And it's close first person because she is writing her letters to people, right? And so you get her feelings and stuff, but
Is that a real hard way, I just got to brainstorm, especially what you just said. Is that a hard way to write? If you're doing straight documents and you do it in first person?
I have never written that way.
I haven't either, but it just sounds really intriguing,
I would assume
especially.
the delivery of
Right.
information
It'll
would
work
be.
in a history.
Well, it would work because I just thought of a neat thing was they just found all those letters between the
Yes.
Duke and the Duchess, you know,
Yes.
from,
Yeah,
I can't even
well,
think of-
what's
yeah.
his name?
Yeah,
The throne,
And the one that advocated, and
And-
so they've just found all these
Philip?
boxes of her
Is
letters.
it Philip?
No, the one that came
Edward.
before George,
Yes,
the one,
yeah,
the
that-
Duke, what was
The
her
one
name?
during World War II?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
one that was the
Edward.
divorcee and everybody had a fit.
Was it Edward?
Yeah, no, it was
Edward?
before Edward.
No,
No, it was, no, it was the Duke, yeah. It
Yeah.
was anyhow, it was the one that advocated.
I know which one you're talking about. I
Yeah,
just thought his
it's
name was
one-
Philip. I might
and
be
yeah.
wrong.
Wallace Simpson, and so,
Well,
Yeah,
Simpson,
well,
right.
They
we
just-
know the woman's name.
yeah, they just found all those letters, and I was
Yeah.
just thinking, boy, that would
That
really
would
be an
be-
incredible book
Right.
to read,
To
if you
use
had it from, you're
Right.
reading all these letters.
Yeah.
And, you know, cause apparently it wasn't as great as it was, that they say, yeah, but the letters were very, very telltale.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of collections,
Right.
letter
There
collections
was.
published between famous people, like tons of, like the letters between Jane Austen and her sister have been published and all that stuff, so there are things like that that are from real world, but as far as like creating a fake, because obviously Dracula's not real, we hope.
Yeah.
As far as creating like a compelling narrative with a cast of characters, I do think this would be kind of hard to achieve because you have to, it's like a police report, like you said, a lot of it's a police report, and some of it's his journal entries and things, but how are you supposed to create closeness with characters with a police report, right?
Well, to segue on this a little bit, have you ever read the Black Company series at all? Glenn Cook. And so Glenn Cook wrote a series and it's a fantasy novel, right? It's about a mercenary group and there's like 10 or 12 novels in the series at this point. And the format of it it is the chronicle of the Black Company. It's literally their records.
Mhm.
And so the first book in the series is from the perspective of the medic, and you get lots of stuff on like, okay, we had 11 people injured on this day. Here's our casualties from this battle. And here's how our medical supplies are. And then a couple books later, you have one on the siege where it's written by somebody who was like stuck in a city for 7 years while it was under siege. Completely different tone
That's
and
cool.
tenor.
Yeah.
Like,
See, that's what I was thinking with this one, where if you could write the first book where he's so enamored with her and all the things that she could do that other women couldn't, and we'll leave it at that, and then how she changed, and then how she, after when he suddenly said, you know, I'm gonna advocate marriage, she was like, I don't wanna marry you, you know, and, cause I was just reading bits and pieces
I
and,
think
you
the
know.
part that would be
that was
hard to
really
write
cool.
would be the Nazi sympathizer part.
The what? No, but I'm saying, I mean, even if it, but
Like
it's
they went to
fiction,
dinner
it's
with a
historical
Nazi, I
fiction,
feel
but
like
you can
that's-
still write enough, cause there's so much stuff about their relationship,
Yeah.
and like she said, the later years, I mean, the both of them, they
I
wouldn't even
think
sit
that
in the
you
same
would
room.
get
probably
super
together.
sued by the royal family.
But if it's,
So-
but if it's out there, that's one thing with the historical thing, if
Right.
it's already out there and it's well past the time,
They
you know,
can
and
still
it's.
sue you,
right.
for sure.
Mm,
Because
Seriously?
The royal family's very like,
Anybody can sue anybody for
Yeah,
anything,
well,
anytime,
yeah,
it doesn't mean it's going
But could you take that concept and apply it to something else historical?
Yeah.
I mean, could you
Well, see,
fictionalize
I
that
use a
somehow?
lot of, like, Eleanor Roosevelt and then, you know, the king and queen
As
of
long
England.
as you're
and all
not
these.
libeling somebody.
No, I'm not
is what-
liable in any
what-
of them, but at the same time is, it
Yeah.
still would be really cool to,
Right.
like I said, I guess if you made it a fictional
Yeah.
person that abdicated and used that same thing.
Or
Yeah,
it
and
takes
the
some
letters.
historical person, but you're going back,
Yeah,
you know, to,
they changed,
you know, the
changed the
1200s or
names and the
something.
faces.
Right, yeah.
But that would really be.
Do a dragnet something.
okay, I just wanna go over one more thing. I know most of you guys are not new writers, but If you are a new writer and this is like super confusing, because there's so many decisions to be made. There's kind of like a little process you can use to make these decisions. So the first thing is think about what are your favorite books? How are they written? Usually you've got a favorite genre, and usually that genre has like norms that you can follow. And then identify your story elements that would be started by different types of point of views. If you're writing a mystery, and you need certain information given by certain different people, maybe you need 2 points of view. Maybe that's how you decide you want dual points of view. If you're writing a romance, maybe you want to hear both people's points of view. If you're writing something where the person is having an internal struggle, maybe you want to choose first person. And then consider how you want to write. What do you want? What is appealing to you personally? I think that's probably again, like should go at the top or in the first one, because if you don't want to write it, you're not going to write it. We already don't want to write the things we want to write, right? So I think that's probably the most important thing. If you start writing something in third person and you start hating third person because you can't get into what the person is actually thinking, they can't write, I thought, blah, 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 then switch to first person, see how that feels. I hate first person. I hate present tense personally. So I don't write that, right? I think that is probably the most important. And if you have any questions about point of view and how you can implement it in your story, you can send me an email. There's my email right there. If you have any questions about the poetry critique group, there's my email right there.
I do have one more question. So if you're writing, you're writing and you've got the person is, it's from their point of view and they're seeing everything happen and everything. And then somebody else walks in the room or some other action comes. Do you have to constantly say he heard, she saw, she felt,
No.
a touch on her hand? I think that's so
Relevant
stilted.
information.
Yeah, it just to get that, keep it in that person's view. How do you do that? I mean, you just let that person start talking instead of saying he turned as she walked in the door.
Well, if the person's going to speak in the scene, yeah, you have to say they're in the scene.
That's
Or
what I'm
else
saying.
it's-
I know,
yeah.
but I mean, if there's two, like I opened up like today, I was working on something and just said that this woman woke up and she saw her, in-laws, they were sitting at the kitchen table. And they said, one says, oh, we didn't think you'd be awake by now. And then the other one says, would you like a cup of coffee? So it's two different people, but I didn't have anything where she turns this way and then she turns that way
No,
and she
you don't
turns
have
that.
to
And I was like, that is so trite.
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
make
mean,
sense.
that would be like, well, then she was just
Yeah.
right-handed, then no, you just, it's summarized information, right? Like she took a drink of her coffee, you don't need to say the individual actions, right?
Right,
If you're
yeah.
speaking to someone and they're speaking, you turn your head.
That's what I thought. I
Yeah.
mean, it just didn't make sense because somebody hit me for that and said, you didn't tell you're changing point of view. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
But you can get to the other end of that where you're not giving enough information. Like I got feedback from someone that like when I was blocking a scene, I wasn't telling enough information about movement through the scene. So like I would say like, oh, they did this thing and then they did that thing. And they're like, well, they never went to the other place, right? You have to say, oh, she walked over here and then she did this. So like you can lose action that you need,
gotcha.
or you can have way too much detail. And I think that's just in the reading of it, right? Like if you read it to yourself and you're like, this is boring, the pacing's bad, you need to cut some things out. If you read it and you're like, this is confusing, you need to put some things in.
Yeah, because it just seemed like it was just so stupid when he turned as he heard her walk through the door.
Well,
and
it's
I'm
a
like,
tension point though.
Yeah.
If you want to create.
You don't need to say,
oh my
and you're
God,
also
you're
using-
up.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
using too many filter words. So that's
That's
something
what I
you can
think.
cut out. When you say she turned to see someone walk through the door, you don't need any of that.
I
It
didn't
can
think I did
say
either.
it can say character walk through the door.
Yeah.
Period. It's her point of view. We know she sees it. We know she notices it because
And then and it introduces that person already walking in, so you don't
Yeah.
have to go, chase
you can
after all these
say
different
Bob walked through
sentences.
the door and sat down.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Or,
know that
or
sounds stupid,
you
but-
can use that to cut out more words. You can use that as a dialogue tag, right? You can say, do you want a cup of coffee? Bob said as he walked through the door and sat down. And then you cut out the said. Well, I didn't cut out the said.
But
can
you
cut
set
out-
the scene.
Yeah, you can like combine things like that, kind of use your words efficiently. And I think that just comes with like writing and writing and writing and like, when you're 500,000 words deep, those are questions that stop occurring to you, right?
You think, like I said, I've
You
had
said 7 books.
I've written seven, they're not published, that's the problem.
Well, no, but
We're
what I
working
meant
on the
is,
first one and
I
the
don't
problem
mean
is-
published words.
No, but I
Just
mean,
words.
but they make sense to me. And then when I've had somebody look at them, they go, "Oh, it's just all these different subplots and all these different characters," and I'm sitting there going, and like I just said that example, they said, "Well, you change point of view," and I'm like, So I'm supposed to physically say that that person turned because they heard a noise walk through the
I
door?
don't think the person that critiqued you understands what point of view is.
Well, it
Cause
drives
somebody
me,
else, if somebody else, and
Yeah.
you've got Bob and Carol and Mary,
and they're in the room,
and they're in the room, they can each talk.
that's what
Unless
I
it
thought.
They
says,
can
unless
each
it
look-
says,
They can each look angry or happy or sad,
Right.
but until you're in that person's point of,
Something
in
that
their
you can't
head.
see, right, that you
If
can't,
you're not in
reading
their
mind.
head,
Yeah.
that's not a different point of view just because they're sitting there angry.
Well, see,
Unless
that's what I
they-
thought.
unless you're
Because they
saying
have no
no.
dialogue in anything.
Well, see, I use a lot of dialogue, and that's why it bothers me because I'm like, they go, well, you just dropped, this person's talking and now this person's talking. I'm like, and if you read up on the next first paragraph, it says all three of them are in the damn kitchen. It's like, what's
But are you
wrong?
saying
that
that the
person doesn't
person
understand
feels,
what
like,
you
are
need
you
to
saying
change your
Bob walked through
critique
the
group.
door and was angry?
No, it's
Okay.
nothing like that. And that's
Okay.
why it's just frustrating to me because, like I said, I've gone through like 3 beta readers and I just want to absolutely knock the living crap out of them. Because every time I rewrite it, I feel like I'm diluting the story because it's like, or something's coming through that's stilted and it doesn't make sense or feel natural to me.
Are your beta readers writers?
No.
Are they
Mm.
readers?
They said they were, but there was one that I don't think she was.
No.
Where'd you get these people?
Unfortunately,
Her dog
when I
said-
first, this is my first time I've ever done it, like I said, so I went to people and said, what kind of books do you like to read? And they go, historical fiction. I said, cool, if you've read a lot of historical
They
fiction.
don't know the rules.
Just say
They don't know the rules.
Just
No,
say
I'll
they
have
don't
to.
know
and then
the rules.
follow.
Like some of my beta readers, one of them writes plays and acts in plays. And
Yeah.
his degree is in engineering, but that's what he does for fun. And then a retired English professor read over one of my books. Very helpful. A librarian read my book.
Are you going through critique before you do beta readers?
Unfortunately, I had a critique group, but the critique group that I was in, I had horror, I had young adult, I had a picture book, and I had children's, and mine's historical
That didn't
fiction.
work.
It doesn't work,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
so I went to another one, and that's a
Beta
hard.
readers are doing critique.
Yeah.
And that is not
That's-
the same thing.
yeah.
Beta readers are for, do you like your characters? Do you like the plot? Is it
Well, that's what I
fast-paced enough?
asked
Does it
myself.
flow? Yeah.
And
It's
see, that's
not,
what I'm
oh, you're
feedback.
head hopping. Head hopping is like a critique group. A critique group of writers will tell you if you're head hopping. That's a technical issue.
Well, see, that was frustrating because when I actually got it to them, I actually had a checklist that I put at the beginning of the notebook and said, these are the things I'm looking for you to see and tell me.
Yeah, feedback.
What do you think of the characters? What do you think of the overall story? What do you think of the subplots? What things are glaring? Did you pick up on any, subliminal things? Because I had written some neat things that I wanted to see if they picked up on them. It's so funny because the girl that edited it picked up on it. I didn't even say anything. And that was something, so that, I knew I was on the right track because somebody had actually picked up on it.
Maybe
Yeah.
they didn't read your directions.
Well, I had 2 that didn't read the book. I had 2 that I know that didn't even read the book because they started talking about a character in chapter 1 that doesn't even appear until chapter 9. And then she had that person getting married to that person at the end, even though the title of the book says Marguerite and Christoph, and she had it marrying the nurse that's 40 years old.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
You
Yeah.
need new people.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, you need to have your book. You need to, in my opinion, you need to take your book through critique group
Go
first,
through
maybe
review
an
or
editor,
something like that.
and then
That's
beta
what I'm
reader.
doing.
Beta reader is the last thing.
Well, I'm right now tweaking it a little bit, and I've got an editor that I feel comfortable with that will
Yeah.
actually read it and
Are
not
you-
charge me. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to pay it, yeah, in a
Well,
contract,
and
but I
you-
want somebody
you
to.
have
read
to
it.
read historical fiction?
editor.
Pardon me?
Do you read
Yes.
historical fiction? Okay, because just open up some of your old books and look, well, how did they handle this when more than 3 people were in the room?
Yeah.
Or something?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's bad when you've already, it's because I'm trying to not change it too much because like I said, the other books fall in line
Right,
with this book. 'Cause
right.
this is the one that gets you to understand, because the common thread with all of them is a music box. Each one,
Okay.
and it goes from 1920 all the way to the year 2000 and through Twist of Fate,
Oh, that's cool.
different people hold that box.
Yeah.
So I need to keep these characters consistent as much as I can because they still appear in the first 3 books. But it is very, and like I said, POV has been my nemesis.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Or I've been led to
because,
believe it's my nemesis.
like,
Mm.
like we talked about in the beginning. The general understanding of POV is, oh, it's the character that I'm running from. Yeah, sure, but it's like 7 other things too, right? So like, if you haven't, sit down and really think about all these components and exactly what they are in your book and exactly what you want them to be. And that'll help you keep in mind. And if you start to stray, just revisit that document, right? Does anybody else have any questions?
This was awesome.
Mhm.
I
Thank
agree.
you. Thank you.
You have got to run the report.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
I did.
Thanks
No,
for having.
25